Welcome back, baseball fans. Drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from today, because you're about to witness a story that proves sometimes the biggest lessons in baseball aren't taught by coaches, they're learned the hard way between the lines. Camden Yards stood majestic under the late afternoon sun, its brick facade glowing warmly as fans filed in for what seemed like just another Baltimore Orioles home game. The date was July 15, 1996, and the air was thick with midsummer humidity, but something else hung in the atmosphere, a tension that would soon explode into one of baseball's most memorable confrontations. In the visitors' bullpen, Marcus Stone, a brash rookie pitcher for the Cleveland Indians, went through his warm-up routine. His fastball had already earned him headlines and a growing reputation as one of the game's most promising young arms. But it was his mouth, not his pitch selection, that would make history tonight. The Indians had arrived in Baltimore riding a 7-game winning streak, with Stone's dominant performances being a key factor. The 23-year-old right-hander had already collected 3 wins during that stretch, and his confidence had swelled into something darker, arrogance that was about to meet its match. In the home dugout, Cal Ripken Jr. went through his own pregame routine, the same one he'd followed for what was now 2,239 consecutive games. The Iron Man of baseball had seen every type of pitcher, every kind of attitude, but what would unfold over the next 9 innings would test even his legendary composure. The baseball world was still celebrating Ripken's breaking of Lou Gehrig's consecutive game streak the previous season, but Stone had been vocal about his thoughts on the record. "Records are meant to be broken," he'd told reporters that morning, "but some guys stick around too long, taking spots from younger players who deserve their chance." The comment had rippled through the baseball community, but Ripken, true to his nature, hadn't responded. He simply continued his preparation, studying video of Stone's recent starts, noting the pitcher's tendencies with the thoroughness that had become his trademark. Camden Yards filled steadily as game time approached. Among the crowd was Lachlan Reed, a former minor league pitcher who had played with Stone in the Indians' farm system. He'd seen the young pitcher's talent, but also his growing propensity for pushing boundaries, especially with established veterans. The pregame festivities wound down, and the Baltimore faithful settled in for what they hoped would be another Orioles victory in a season full of promise. In the broadcast booth, veteran announcer Harlan Grant sensed something in the air. He'd been calling games for 3 decades, and he knew when the ingredients for baseball drama were mixing. Stone's first inning was typically dominant, 3 up, 3 down, with 2 strikeouts. His body language as he left the mound spoke volumes, each step carrying the swagger of someone who believed they owned the baseball world. The rookie had yet to face Ripken, who was due up second in the bottom of the 2nd inning. Between innings, Stone paced the dugout, his energy barely contained. His teammate, veteran catcher Cyrus Lane, tried to calm him down, recognizing the dangerous combination of youth, talent, and unchecked ego. But Stone was beyond reaching, his mind already focused on the confrontation to come. The top of the 2nd inning passed quickly, and then it was time. The crowd's energy shifted as Ripken emerged from the dugout, bat in hand, decades of baseball excellence embodied in his measured stride toward the batter's box. But before he could step in, Stone made his first move in what would become an unforgettable chess match. The young pitcher stepped off the mound, making a show of cleaning his cleats while staring directly at Ripken. The gesture was subtle but clear, a young lion challenging the pride's leader. The crowd picked up on it immediately, a low murmur spreading through the stands. Ripken had faced every type of intimidation tactic in his career, and his response was characteristic: no response at all. He simply stepped into the box, tapped the plate with his bat, and settled into his stance, ready for whatever the brash young pitcher had in store. Stone's first pitch was a statement, a fastball that screamed high and inside, forcing Ripken to duck back. The crowd erupted in boos, but Stone's smirk was visible from the upper deck. This wasn't just about one at-bat, this was about making a name for himself at the expense of a legend. In the dugout, Orioles manager Jasper Lane gripped the railing, his knuckles white. He'd seen plenty of young pitchers try to make their mark against established stars, but something about Stone's demeanor suggested this was different. This was personal. The next pitch was another fastball, this time catching too much of the plate. Ripken turned on it, sending a rocket down the left field line that just curved foul. The message was clear: the veteran wasn't about to be intimidated by anyone, least of all a rookie with more attitude than accomplishments. Stone's response was immediate and provocative. He walked halfway to home plate, ostensibly to receive a new baseball, but his words carried clearly in the sudden quiet of the ballpark. "That's all you got left, old man? Warning track power." The disrespect was blatant, and the crowd's reaction was instant and hostile. But Ripken remained unmoved, his face a mask of concentration. He'd built his career on consistency and professionalism, and he wasn't about to let a rookie's taunts change that. From the broadcast booth, Harlan Grant's voice carried the tension to listeners across the country. "In my 30 years calling games, I've never seen such blatant disrespect shown to a future Hall of Famer. Stone is playing with fire here, folks, and he might be about to learn why they call Cal Ripken Jr. the Iron Man." The at-bat continued, each pitch carrying more weight than a typical second-inning confrontation. Stone's arsenal was impressive: a 97 miles per hour fastball, a sharp breaking curve, and a changeup that had fooled the best hitters in the league. But Ripken had seen it all before, and his patience was legendary. In the Cleveland dugout, manager Warren Fox watched with growing concern. He'd tried to rein in Stone's attitude over the past few weeks, but the young pitcher's success had made him increasingly resistant to guidance. Now, as he watched the rookie challenge one of baseball's most respected figures, Fox could sense a lesson was coming, though not the one Stone thought he was teaching. The count worked its way to 2-2, each pitch a chapter in this evolving story. The crowd had grown unusually quiet, sensing that they were witnessing something more than a typical at-bat. This was becoming a battle of baseball philosophies: old school versus new school, respect versus arrogance, wisdom versus raw talent. Stone's next pitch was another brushback, this one coming dangerously close to Ripken's head. The umpire, Julian Fox, immediately issued a warning to both benches. But Stone's response was to laugh, making a show of his dismissal of the veteran's presence in the batter's box. What happened next would be talked about in baseball circles for years to come. But at that moment, as Cal Ripken Jr. stepped out of the batter's box to collect himself, no one could have predicted how this confrontation would end, or the lasting impact it would have on both men's careers. The summer evening air crackled with tension as Ripken settled back into his stance. In the on-deck circle, his teammate Milo Grant gripped his bat tighter, angry at the disrespect being shown to the team's leader. But Ripken's face remained calm, his eyes focused only on the task at hand. This wasn't just about one at-bat anymore. This was about something larger, about respect for the game, about the difference between confidence and arrogance, about lessons that sometimes need to be learned the hard way. And as Stone took his position on the mound for the next pitch, the stage was set for a moment that would become part of baseball folklore. The tension at Camden Yards had reached a fever pitch as Cal Ripken Jr. dug back into the batter's box. Marcus Stone's previous brushback pitch had awakened something in the crowd, not just anger at the young pitcher's disrespect, but anticipation of how baseball's Iron Man would respond. Stone stood on the mound, rolling the baseball in his hands, his confidence still unwavering despite the warnings from both the umpire and his own dugout. In the Cleveland bullpen, pitching coach Gideon Rivers shook his head, recognizing the dangerous territory his young star was entering. The next pitch wasn't just a baseball thrown toward home plate, it was a challenge to everything Cal Ripken Jr. represented. Stone unleashed a fastball that rode high and inside yet again, forcing Ripken to hit the dirt. This time, the ball sailed close enough to ripple the future Hall of Famer's jersey. Umpire Julian Fox immediately ejected Stone from the game, but the young pitcher wasn't finished. He stood on the mound, arms spread wide, shouting toward Ripken, "Maybe if you took a day off once in a while, you'd be quick enough to get out of the way." The Baltimore dugout erupted, with several players having to be restrained. But Ripken slowly got to his feet, dusted himself off, and did something unexpected. He smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile, but rather the kind that suggested Stone had just made a serious miscalculation. Indians manager Warren Fox rushed onto the field, trying to get his pitcher to leave before the situation escalated further. But Stone shrugged off his manager's guidance, continuing to gesture and shout as he slowly walked toward the dugout. In the broadcast booth, Harlan Grant's voice carried the gravity of the moment. "In all my years calling baseball, I've never seen such blatant disrespect shown to a player of Ripken's stature. Stone may be about to learn a painful lesson about the unwritten rules of this game." What happened next would become part of baseball legend. Instead of responding to Stone's taunts, Ripken calmly called time and stepped out of the box. He walked over to Indians catcher Cyrus Lane and spoke quietly for a moment. Lane's expression shifted from surprise to understanding, and he nodded slowly. Stone, still not in the dugout, watched this exchange with growing uncertainty. For the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed his face. He had expected anger, retaliation, or at least visible frustration. Ripken's calm demeanor was somehow more unsettling than any angry response would have been. The Cleveland bullpen started stirring, with reliever Kellen Wild beginning to warm up. But before he could take over, the game would witness something remarkable, a veteran teaching a lesson that no pitching coach could deliver. As Stone finally reached the dugout, still muttering under his breath, Ripken returned to the batter's box. The replacement pitcher would be granted as many warm-up throws as needed, but first, there was unfinished business to address. Cleveland's veteran catcher, Cyrus Lane, approached the dugout and spoke quietly to his young teammate. "Kid, you just wrote a check your talent can't cash. Watch and learn. This is what real baseball greatness looks like." In the Orioles' dugout, manager Jasper Lane gathered his team close. Whatever he said wasn't heard by the microphones, but the players' expressions shifted from anger to focused determination. This wasn't going to be about retaliation, it would be about something more meaningful. The new Indians pitcher, Kellen Wild, took his warm-up throws under the watchful eyes of nearly 50,000 fans. The atmosphere in Camden Yards had changed. The initial anger had transformed into anticipation, as if everyone present knew they were about to witness something special. Stone sat at the far end of the Cleveland dugout, his earlier bravado diminishing with each passing moment. Veterans on his own team were shooting him disapproving looks, and even his manager kept his distance. The rookie was learning the hard way that there was more to baseball than just throwing hard. When play resumed, Ripken stepped in against Wild with the count still 2-2. The at-bat that had started with Stone's disrespect was about to end with a lesson in baseball dignity. Wild's first pitch was clean and professional, no message, no drama, just baseball the way it was meant to be played. Ripken took the pitch for ball 3, his patience a stark contrast to Stone's earlier emotional display. The next pitch was a fastball on the outer half, and what followed would be talked about in baseball circles for years to come. With a swing that represented 2 decades of professional excellence, Ripken drove the ball deep into the left field seats. The home run wasn't just a score on the board, it was a statement about the right way to play the game. As he rounded the bases, his pace was measured, his expression focused. No gestures, no theatrics, just pure baseball dignity. In the Cleveland dugout, Stone slumped lower in his seat. His teammates' silence spoke volumes, and the lessons were just beginning. As Ripken touched home plate, he nodded briefly to Cyrus Lane, a gesture of respect between two professionals who understood what baseball was really about. The next inning brought another dimension to the unfolding drama. Cleveland's cleanup hitter, power-hitting first baseman Isaiah Drake, stepped in against Baltimore's pitcher, Nico Flynn. Everyone in the ballpark tensed, expecting retaliation for Stone's actions. Instead, Flynn pitched straight up, no messages, no brushbacks. It was a masterclass in professional baseball, following the example set by their veteran leader. The game would be won or lost based on skill and strategy, not emotion and retaliation. As the innings progressed, Stone's earlier behavior stood in increasingly stark contrast to the caliber of baseball being played on the field. Both teams demonstrated why they were in playoff contention, executing plays with precision and professionalism. In the 6th inning, Ripken came to bat again, this time with 2 runners on base. The Cleveland bullpen had settled down under Wild's steady pitching, but there was still electricity in the air whenever number 8 stepped to the plate. This time, Ripken drove a double into the gap, scoring both runners. As he stood on second base, he caught Stone's eye in the dugout and gave him a slight nod, not of confrontation, but of instruction. The message was clear. This is how you make your statement in baseball. Between innings, veteran Indians outfielder Blaze Stone approached the rookie pitcher. "You see what's happening here, kid? Ripken's teaching you more about baseball in 9 innings than some players learn in their entire careers." The game continued, with both teams playing at a high level. But the real story was the contrast between Stone's early behavior and the clinic in professional baseball that followed. Every player on the field seemed determined to demonstrate the game's finer points. In the broadcast booth, Harlan Grant summarized it perfectly. "Sometimes the biggest statements in baseball are made without saying a word. Cal Ripken Jr. isn't just showing us how to hit tonight, he's showing us how to be a professional." As the evening wore on, the lesson became increasingly clear. Baseball wasn't just about talent or achievement, it was about respect, professionalism, and understanding your place in the game's greater history. Stone's talented arm had gotten him to the major leagues, but it was becoming painfully clear that he had much more to learn. In the 8th inning, during a pitching change, Cleveland manager Warren Fox finally addressed his young pitcher. "Watch every moment of this, Marcus. This is the difference between being good at baseball and being great at it. Ripken's not just playing the game, he's teaching it." The Baltimore crowd, which had been hostile towards Stone early in the game, had shifted their energy to supporting their team's professional approach. Every clean play, every disciplined at-bat was cheered as if it were a home run, the fans understanding they were witnessing something more significant than just another regular season game. Even the umpiring crew, led by Julian Fox, seemed to appreciate the lesson unfolding. Their calls were crisp and professional, maintaining the game's dignity without becoming part of the story. This was baseball as it was meant to be played. As the 9th inning approached, the impact of the evening's events was visible on Stone's face. The arrogant smirk was gone, replaced by a thoughtful expression as he watched Ripken and his teammates demonstrate baseball at its finest. In the Orioles' dugout, manager Jasper Lane gathered his team for a quick word before the final frame. Whatever he said brought knowing smiles to his players' faces. They understood that they weren't just winning a game, they were teaching a lesson about baseball's soul. The 9th inning began with Baltimore holding a comfortable lead, but the score had become secondary to the evening's larger narrative. Each play, each at-bat, each interaction between players carried the weight of baseball tradition and professionalism. When Ripken came to bat for the final time that night, the entire stadium stood in appreciation, not just for his performance, but for the lesson in baseball dignity they had witnessed. The standing ovation wasn't just for a great player, it was for someone who understood that how you play the game matters more than any individual achievement. Stone watched from the dugout, the game's true meaning finally sinking in. His teammate, veteran infielder Eamon Hayes, leaned over and whispered, "Remember this night, rookie. You just got a masterclass in what it means to be a big leaguer." As the final out was recorded and the teams began to leave the field, the lasting impact of the evening was clear. Baseball had always been more than just a game of statistics and scores, it was a repository of wisdom, tradition, and unwritten rules that governed not just how to play, but how to conduct oneself as a professional. The post-game handshakes carried extra significance, with players from both teams understanding they had been part of something special. But the most important moment came when Ripken passed Stone in the handshake line. The veteran's words to the rookie weren't picked up by microphones, but the young pitcher's expression suggested their importance. The baseball world would soon learn that this game had marked a turning point in Marcus Stone's career, but the real story was still unfolding in the warm Baltimore night. The morning after the now-famous confrontation at Camden Yards, baseball was buzzing with discussion of what had transpired. Sports shows across the country replayed the footage, Marcus Stone's aggressive pitches, his taunts, and most importantly, Cal Ripken Jr.'s masterclass in professional baseball conduct. In the Cleveland team hotel, Stone sat alone in the breakfast room, surrounded by newspapers with headlines like "Rookie's Lesson in Respect" and "Iron Man Shows True Strength." His teammate, veteran catcher Cyrus Lane, watched from across the room, remembering his own early days in the majors and the lessons he'd learned about respecting the game. The Indians' manager, Warren Fox, had called an early morning team meeting. As players filed into the hotel's conference room, the tension was palpable. Stone's actions hadn't just embarrassed himself, they'd put the whole team in an uncomfortable position during a crucial part of the season. "Gentlemen," Fox began, his voice carrying the weight of decades in baseball, "last night wasn't just about one pitcher losing his cool. It was about understanding what this game really means." He turned to Stone, who sat slumped in his chair. "Marcus, you've got all the talent in the world, but talent without respect is like a Ferrari without gas. It might look good, but it won't take you anywhere." Meanwhile, at Camden Yards, groundskeepers Archer Hayes and Bennett Cruz prepared the field for that evening's game, discussing what they'd witnessed. "Been working here 20 years, Hayes said, chalking the batter's box, "and I've never seen Cal lose his cool. Last night showed why he's not just a great player, he's a great teacher." The morning sports shows were full of analysis, with former players weighing in on the incident. Isaiah Drake, a retired all-star who had played with Ripken in the early years, appeared on national television to provide context. "What people need to understand," Drake explained, "is that Cal didn't just show restraint last night. He showed leadership. Every young player in both dugouts learned more about baseball in those 9 innings than they could in 100 coaching sessions." In the Orioles clubhouse, equipment manager Finian Cole was arranging uniforms when he overheard a conversation between 2 rookie players, discussing how Ripken had handled the situation. "Did you see how he never lost focus?" one asked. "Even after all that drama, he just kept playing his game." The baseball commissioner's office released a statement, announcing a 5-game suspension for Stone. But more significant than the official punishment was the reaction from the baseball community. Veterans across the league were using the incident as a teaching moment for their younger teammates. Cleveland's pitching coach, Gideon Rivers, found Stone sitting alone in the hotel lobby, staring at his phone. The social media response had been overwhelming, with baseball fans from around the world sharing their thoughts on his behavior. "Put the phone away," Rivers advised, sitting down next to his young pitcher. "This isn't about what people are saying online. This is about who you want to be in this game. Every great player has had their moment of truth. This is yours." Back in Baltimore, Ripken arrived at the ballpark early, as he had done for the past 2,240 consecutive games. Reporters were waiting, hoping for a quote about the previous night's events. His response was characteristically measured. "Baseball has a way of teaching its own lessons. Sometimes the best thing we can do is let those lessons sink in." In Cleveland's front office, General Manager Dorian Blake was dealing with the fallout. Phone calls were coming in from Stone's agent, from league officials, and from veteran players offering to mentor the young pitcher. The incident had sparked a larger conversation about the role of veterans in teaching baseball's unwritten rules. The story took another turn when Lachlan Reed, Stone's former minor league teammate, shared some insight with the media. "Marcus has always had that edge to him," Reed explained. But what he didn't understand was that edge needs to be focused on getting better, not tearing others down. Throughout the day, more details emerged about what Ripken had said to Stone in the post-game handshake line. According to those nearby, his words were simple but powerful. "The game will teach you what you need to learn. The question is whether you're ready to listen." In the Indians clubhouse before that evening's game, veteran first baseman Harlan Grant pulled Stone aside. "You know what the real mistake was?" he asked. "It wasn't the brushback pitches or even the taunts. It was thinking that making a name for yourself meant tearing down someone else's legacy." The baseball world continued to react as the day progressed. Former managers, players, and analysts all weighed in on the significance of what had transpired. But perhaps the most telling response came from the minor leagues, where coaches were already using video of the incident as a teaching tool. At the Cleveland Indians AAA affiliate, manager Jasper Lane gathered his team to watch the footage. "Notice what Ripken doesn't do," he pointed out. "No showboating after the home run, no gestures, no retaliation. That's not weakness, that's understanding what really matters in this game." Stone's teammates were handling the situation in different ways. Some, like veteran outfielder Kellen Wild, maintained their distance, letting the young pitcher process the lessons on his own. Others, like Cyrus Lane, took a more active role in helping him understand the magnitude of his actions. "You know what makes Cal Ripken Jr. special?" Lane asked Stone during batting practice. "It's not just the consecutive game streak or the hits or the home runs. It's that he makes everyone around him better by showing them the right way to play this game. The incident had sparked discussions throughout baseball about the changing nature of the sport. Some pointed to the erosion of traditional values, while others saw moments like this as proof that baseball's capacity for self-correction was still intact. In Baltimore's dugout, manager Nico Flynn used the pre-game meeting to emphasize what they'd witnessed. Last night, Cal didn't just show us how to handle disrespect. He showed us why respect matters in the first place. This game is bigger than any one of us. Social media continued to buzz with reactions, but a new trend was emerging. Rather than simply criticizing Stone, people were sharing their own stories of learning baseball's hard lessons. Veterans posted about their rookie mistakes and how the game's traditions had shaped their careers. Stone spent most of the afternoon in the video room, watching not just footage of the previous night's game, but old clips of Ripken throughout his career. The consistency, the professionalism, the quiet leadership, it was all there, a 2-decade lesson in baseball excellence. Cleveland's team psychologist, Dr. Milo Grant, observed a change in Stone's demeanor. Sometimes, he noted to the coaching staff, a player needs to hit bottom before they can understand how to reach the top. Last night might have been the best thing that could have happened to him. As evening approached and fans began arriving for the second game of the series, there was a different energy in the ballpark. Stone, serving the first day of his suspension, would watch from the clubhouse, but his presence was still felt in the conversations throughout the stadium. In the press box, veteran announcer Harlan Grant prepared his notes for the broadcast. "In all my years calling games," he mused to his colleague, "I've seen a lot of young players learn lessons the hard way. But last night was something special. It was like watching baseball itself teach a masterclass." The incident had also sparked interest in Ripken's consecutive game streak. Fans and media began discussing not just the number of games, but what that streak represented: consistency, dedication, respect for the game. Stone's comments about taking spots from younger players now seemed not just disrespectful, but fundamentally misguided. As players from both teams prepared for the game, there was a noticeable change in how they interacted. The previous night's events had reminded everyone that baseball was not just a competition, but a tradition to be upheld and passed on. In the Cleveland clubhouse, veteran pitcher Eamon Hayes placed a copy of that morning's Baltimore Sun on Stone's locker. The headline read, "Ripken's Response, a Lesson in Baseball Dignity." It wasn't meant as a punishment, but as a reminder that every player's actions contribute to the game's legacy. The baseball community's response continued to evolve throughout the day. Former players who had faced Ripken over his career shared stories of their own interactions with the Iron Man, painting a picture of consistency and professionalism that stood in stark contrast to Stone's behavior. As game time approached, the discussion shifted from the specific incident to its larger implications for baseball's future. How would the next generation of players learn the game's unwritten rules? Who would carry on the tradition of quiet leadership that players like Ripken embodied? Stone watched the pregame coverage from the clubhouse, seeing his actions from the previous night replayed and analyzed. But now, with the benefit of reflection and the wisdom shared by his teammates, he was beginning to understand the true cost of his behavior, not just to himself, but to the game he claimed to love. The lessons were still unfolding, rippling through the baseball world like waves from a stone dropped in still water. But as the umpires prepared to call play ball for another night of baseball, one thing was clear: the game had a way of teaching its most important lessons to those who needed them most. 1 month after the infamous confrontation at Camden Yards, Marcus Stone sat in the Cleveland Indians clubhouse, preparing for his first start since serving his suspension. The baseball world had changed for him during those weeks of reflection, and tonight would show whether he had truly learned from his encounter with Cal Ripken Jr. The morning papers were still running stories about what had become known in baseball circles as the lesson. Stone's teammates had watched his transformation during the suspension, from angry defiance to quiet introspection, and finally to genuine understanding. Veteran catcher Cyrus Lane had been particularly instrumental in helping the young pitcher grasp the deeper meanings of what had transpired. Remember, Lane told Stone as they reviewed the scouting reports for that evening's game, "Throwing a baseball isn't what makes you a pitcher. Understanding the game, respecting its traditions, That's what turns a thrower into a pitcher. In Baltimore, Cal Ripken Jr. continued his streak, now at 2,270 consecutive games. His handling of Stone's provocation had added another layer to his already legendary status. Young players around the league had taken to studying not just his batting stance and fielding techniques, but his demeanor, his professionalism, his way of carrying himself. The confrontation had sparked something larger in baseball, a renewed appreciation for the game's unwritten rules and the veterans who upheld them. In clubhouses across both leagues, conversations between younger and older players had taken on new meaning. Indians manager Warren Fox had noticed the change in his young pitcher. Gone was the brash arrogance that had led to the confrontation. In its place was something more valuable, a quiet determination to prove himself worthy of the game's traditions. "The kid's different now," Fox confided to pitching coach Gideon Rivers before the game. "He's not just throwing between starts, he's learning. Watching film, asking questions, trying to understand the history of the position." The transformation hadn't gone unnoticed by the baseball community. Several veteran players who had initially condemned Stone's behavior now spoke about the importance of growth and redemption in the game. Among them was Isaiah Drake, who had faced both Ripken and Stone during his career. "Baseball has a way of humbling you," Drake explained during a pregame interview. "The great ones learn from those moments. They use them to become not just better players, but better representatives of the game." As Stone warmed up in the bullpen, his mechanics were the same, his fastball still electric. But there was something different about his presence on the mound. The swagger had been replaced by purpose, the arrogance by focus. In the broadcast booth, announcer Harlan Grant noted the change. "Sometimes in baseball, as in life, our most important victories come not from defeating others, but from overcoming ourselves." Young Marcus Stone appears to have learned that lesson. The game itself became a testament to Stone's transformation. Each pitch was thrown with intention rather than emotion. When batters dug in, there were no brushbacks, no attempts at intimidation. This was baseball played the right way, the way Ripken had demonstrated during that fateful night in Baltimore. Between innings, veteran teammate Eamon Hayes watched Stone's demeanor in the dugout. "Look at him now," he remarked to Blaze Stone. "He's not just playing the game, he's studying it, learning it, respecting it." The story had resonated beyond baseball. Sports psychologists like Dr. Milo Grant began using it as an example of how athletes could handle confrontation and learn from their mistakes. "What we witnessed wasn't just a baseball lesson," Grant explained. "It was a lesson in emotional intelligence and professional growth." In minor league clubhouses, coaches used video of both the confrontation and Stone's subsequent transformation as a teaching tool. Jasper Lane, managing in AAA, made it part of his orientation for new players. "This is what baseball can teach you," he would tell them, "if you're willing to learn." The incident had even reached beyond American shores. International baseball programs began incorporating the story into their player development curricula, recognizing that the lessons about respect and professionalism transcended cultural boundaries. Back in Cleveland, Stone's performance that night showed the fruits of his reflection. His pitches were just as powerful, but now they were thrown with precision rather than anger. When he struck out batters, there were no demonstrations, no celebrations, just a quiet walk back to the dugout. Between innings, cameras caught Stone studying the game, taking notes, watching veteran players' routines. The brash young pitcher who had thought he had nothing to learn was gone, replaced by someone who understood that baseball knowledge was a never-ending pursuit. The transformation affected the entire Indians team. Younger players who had previously kept their distance from veterans now sought their advice. The clubhouse culture shifted from individual achievement to collective wisdom. Cyrus Lane, catching Stone's first game back, noticed the difference in their pregame meetings. Before, he would just wave off signs he didn't like, Lane told reporters. Now he wants to understand the thinking behind each pitch selection. He's not just throwing, he's pitching. The baseball media, which had initially condemned Stone's behavior, now began reporting on his transformation. Stories appeared about his time during the suspension, how he had spent hours studying footage of great pitchers, learning not just their mechanics but their approach to the game. Even the fans had noticed the change. Where once they had booed his displays of arrogance, they now appreciated his focused professionalism. The transformation was earning him a different kind of respect, not for his talent alone, but for his growth as a baseball player and person. As the season progressed, Stone's statistics improved along with his attitude. His pitches, thrown with purpose rather than emotion, became more effective. His games, managed with strategy rather than bravado, became more successful. In Baltimore, Ripken continued his streak, his consistent excellence a daily reminder of what baseball professionalism looked like. When asked about Stone's transformation, his response was characteristic. The game teaches us all what we need to learn. The key is being willing to listen. The confrontation had sparked discussions throughout baseball about mentorship and tradition. Teams began implementing formal programs pairing veteran players with rookies, recognizing the value of passing down not just technical knowledge but professional wisdom. Stone's agent, who had initially worried about the incident's impact on his client's career, now found himself fielding different kinds of inquiries. Teams weren't just interested in Stone's pitching statistics. They wanted to know about his growth, his maturity, his understanding of the game. The story had become part of baseball lore, told and retold in clubhouses and dugouts across the country. But unlike many baseball stories, this one wasn't about a dramatic home run or a perfect game. It was about the game's capacity to teach and transform. As the season drew to a close, Stone's transformation was complete. His final statistics were impressive, but more impressive was the respect he had earned from teammates and opponents alike. He had learned what Cal Ripken Jr. had known all along, that true greatness in baseball came not from dominating others, but from respecting the game itself. In his final start of the season, Stone faced the Orioles again. The atmosphere was different this time. No tension, no drama, just baseball played the way it was meant to be played. After the game, Ripken sought out the young pitcher. "You've learned a lot," the Iron Man told him. "But the most important thing you've learned is that there's always more to learn." The moment, captured by cameras but not by microphones, showed two generations of baseball, one passing wisdom to the other. The incident had become more than just a cautionary tale. It was now a story of redemption, of growth, of baseball's enduring ability to shape character. Stone's journey from arrogance to understanding had become a testament to the game's deeper values. As teams prepared for the off-season, the legacy of that night in Baltimore continued to resonate. Baseball had always been more than just a game of statistics and scores. It was a repository of wisdom, a teacher of values, a shaper of character. Stone's story became part of the larger narrative of baseball, a reminder that the game's greatest lessons often came from its hardest moments. His transformation stood as proof that in baseball, as in life, it was never too late to learn, to grow, to change. The final chapter of this story wasn't written on a scorecard or in a record book. It was written in the way Stone now carried himself, in the respect he showed for the game and its traditions, in his understanding that baseball greatness was measured not just in statistics, but in character. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and share a moment when you learned an important lesson about respect and humility. Because sometimes the greatest victories in sports aren't the ones that show up in the box score, they're the ones that transform us from the inside out.